Good morning. It is March 2nd, 2021, and this is the regular board meeting for Franklin County Commissioners. Please join me, and I'm calling the meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now it's on. Just making sure all the mics are working here. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Milham. All right, so first order on the business here is approval of minutes from January 12th and January 16th. Is there any addition, changes, or corrections to these minutes, commissioners?
No changes.
No changes.
Okay, it is unanimous that they are approved. And next is the closed record hearing, and I believe Nicole is going to present.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Nicole Stickney, and I'm with AHBL. I'm a contract planner for Franklin County, and so I'm here representing the Franklin County Building and Planning Department. What we have before you is a closed record hearing for a quasi-judicial item. This is a zoning change under file ZC 2020-02. The requested zoning change is for a 33.92, that's an approximate size, acre parcel. The request is to be rezoned from AP 20 to RC1. The Planning Commission did review this item in an open record hearing, and they have recommended approval, as has staff. What we found is that the parcel to be rezoned is located within what's known as the Columbia River West area. That's identified in the comprehensive plan, and the land use designation is rural shoreline. As such, the present zoning AP 20 is not consistent with the land use designation in the comprehensive plan. So the rezone request to RC1 is going to make the property more compliant with the comprehensive plan. I do want to highlight that at the Planning Commission meeting, it was discussed that there's a small sliver of land between the area to be proposed to be rezoned and an area that already has been rezoned to RC1 that was not included in the original application because it's outside of the parcel for which the rezone is being sought. That sliver of land is where a rezoning line previously was made according to a farm unit line rather than a parcel line. So that created that ambiguity there. We found that it was important and in the public interest to address that issue before we brought this to you. And so we communicated with the adjacent property owners to see if they would consent to the rezone, and they have done so in writing, and I've included that on the record for you. So in summary, we've prepared a ordinance for you to consider this morning to make the rezone effective according to the findings and facts and conditions of approval as determined at the Planning Commission meeting. And that also includes the rezone of those sliver parcels to remedy that issue. Thank you very much.
Okay, with that, commissioners?
Ms. Stickney, who is the applicant?
The applicant is an agent working on behalf of the parcel owner. The applicant was written as Big Sky Development, which is Dave Greeno. The owner of the property is Deborah Kohler, and it was Caleb Stromstad who spoke on behalf of the applicant and the owner at the public hearing.
Okay. And to your knowledge, those are the only individuals with an ownership interest?
To my understanding, yes.
Okay.
Commissioner, I think the planning director has a comment.
But those sliver parcels that I discussed, those have separate owners. That was Lee Eichmeyer and Ms. Hadley Kohler. And those are the individuals that I reached out to according to the assessor's records, and I was able to communicate with them. They did take a little time to review the matter. I believe in one instance, they spoke with an attorney before telling us that, yes, they consented to the rezone.
Okay. Well, I'm going to defer for a moment. Others may have some questions, then we'll come back.
Certainly.
There was no public opposition to this?
No, sir, there was no public opposition on the record. I did see that there was some discussion from Washington State Department of Transportation with concern about what future development may look like. However, they did acknowledge that at this stage, this is a rezone application and it's not a application for a plat for development. It has been made clear, however, that future development is anticipated for this area and they plan to subdivide.
The action then would be a total of how many acres?
In total, when we add up the sliver pieces, if you will, with the rezone, the total will become 35.92 acres.
Okay. And this is off the end of Terrace Drive, south end?
That is correct.
Okay. So I would just note for the record, since these closed record quasi judicial items don't come up every day, and some of us maybe have had the opportunity to see more of them than others, that it would be a good time just to identify that anytime we have these land use actions, open record or closed, that it's important if any of us have any sort of a perceived or actual conflict of interest by ownership, development interest, or anything else, that be disclosed for the public benefit. I don't have any conflicts, and I don't know that anyone else does, and I'm not suggesting anyone else does. It's just that this would be the first one of these that I think we've seen with this new board, and just seemed like an appropriate time to cover that. Thanks.
Yes, and I would highlight that this is subject to the Open Public Meetings Act. And as such, any ex parte communication or any potential conflicts of interest should be disclosed by any commissioners under that act.
Yeah, this is the, excuse me, the first I heard anything about this. I do own property just up the river, but
You would typically say then, Commissioner, that you don't believe that your ownership of property would have any effect on you being able to make a non-partial decision on this matter.
yeah, that would be correct.
And for the record, I'm aware of the property that Commissioner Mullen owns, and I concur that I don't see any conflict. If anything, it's more competition for the parcels that he may want to sell someday, so I have no concerns.
Okay. So with that, I don't have any questions. I'm just looking at it, and it looks like it ties in. Does this now bring us together, ties the land together with the development closer to Pasco, and then further north, it sort of ties everything together as being the same classification, does it not?
What this will do is create a situation where we have a large parcel that has zoning that does not match with the comprehensive plan designation.
Right.
And so this will be a good change in terms of becoming more compliant with the comprehensive plan land use map. It also will match up with some surrounding zoning on the east side. The west side will remain AP20, but that is not part of the rural shoreline area known as Columbia River West area in the comprehensive plan.
All righty. So it looks like we have an ordinance 01-2020 upon approval. Does this need to be a motion, or is this just a consensus? Consensus? motion? We need a
We have a
motion.
suggested motion on the
Yes.
This
agenda summary
requires,
report,
Mr.
Mr.
Chairman,
Chairman.
this requires a motion, a second opportunity for
Yep.
discussion and a vote. And my, my document is showing this is zoning designation change 2020-03. And the ordinance number, I believe you said was, maybe you could repeat that.
01-2020.
01-2020.
Oh, it says 2020. Is it 2021? Oh, okay. It's 2021. 01-2021.
The zoning designation changed, Nicole, excuse me. My daughter-in-law is Noelle, so I'm going to do that a lot. Zoning designation change 2020-03 is still accurate.
Yes.
Yes, that is the file number from the department.
So waiting on a motion.
I make the motion that we approve.
Sorry, is that the whole motion?
To approve zone change 2020-03 for approval.
Okay, so I'll take the motion as moving to approve 2020-03 under ordinance number 01-2021. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion.
Nicole, the matter with this rural shoreline designation not complying with the comp plan, are you aware of other areas where we have similar disconnects?
There are some areas, yes, Commissioner, where there is a mismatch between the comprehensive land use map and the zoning. We have studied this and we've made some recommendations. One thing we want to do is proceed cautiously so that we don't render uses as being non-conforming if we were to just go ahead with a rezone. So that's something we've been looking at as part of our comprehensive plan update process.
Okay, and staying within the record for this closed record action, I don't recall it being specifically called out, but because you cited the comp plan and the relevant rules, I would just note that if we get other similar requests, we effectively create an equity precedent here, such that actually, I don't think I can ask the question and still stay within the record, so I'll take it up with staff later. It has to do with treating everybody equitably.
What I would say is that every rezone should be looked at with its own merit, and there are criteria for approval. And one of the criteria is compliance with the comprehensive plan, and so that's something we look at very seriously.
Okay, thanks.
Further discussion?
I have no further discussion.
Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Passes unanimously. Thank you, Nicole. And then moving on, we've got next on the agenda, we got an appeal hearing. Nicole, this is also you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is an appeal hearing for an administrative decision, which was a denial for a short plat. The file number was SP 2021-03. The applicant's name was Melissa Kelly. So she filed a timely appeal in accordance with Franklin County Code of the department's administrative decision to deny a short plat. The application was to divide a parcel that already had a home built on it. Details, the parcel number and everything are in your packets. This parcel was approximately 22.79 acres. So it was a little larger than the minimum lot size required in an AP20 zone. I do believe that this, from what I could tell, that this parcel was likely created as an exempt segregation pursuant to our...
So that would be a pre-GMA segregation?
No, sir. So we have exemptions in Franklin County Code, Title 16 subdivisions, and there are certain exemptions where you don't have to go through either a short plat or a subdivision process.
Okay.
There's different examples, but one is a division of land into lots or tracts. Excuse me, I was starting to read the wrong one. Divisions of land into lots or tracts, each of which is 1/128th of a section of land or larger, or 20 acres of land or larger if the land is not capable of a description as a fraction of a section of land. So that is in AP 20, you can do an exempt segregation as long as each parcel is 20 acres in size. In our AP 40 zone, you can do an exempt segregation provided every parcel is 40 acres or larger in size. So that just tells us how we got to the parcel size. So she proposed to now do a subdivision that would create two parcels from the one original parcel, the first being 20.68 acres in size and the second one being 2.11 acres in size. The larger parcel would retain the home that's already built on it. Smaller parcel would be created for a new home site so that she could build a house on that lot. The department issued the denial letter on February 3rd of this year with written findings that the proposal does not comply with Franklin County Code 17.10.050 subsection F1, which is the innovative agricultural short plat provisions, on the grounds that the proposed short plat would not comply with that density standard, one lot to every 20 acres. It says in the code, for every parcel less than 20 acres in size in a short plat, there shall be a minimum of 20 acres set aside in the main farm parcel. This innovative agricultural short plat provision, I believe, was to help farmers. So you might have a large farm. You already have a home on the property. Maybe now you want to have that home be on a separate parcel. You don't want it to be 20 acres. You want it to be smaller. So what you do is you create a smaller parcel over here with the house on it. Say it has to be at least 1 acre. Let's say for this scenario, it's 3 acres. In the main farm parcel, you have at least 20 acres to account for the 3 acres over here to make sure that the density comes out in the end.
So Nicole, let me insert a question here because
Yes,
it kind of goes to the point of the whole thing. Is there an ordinance, a comprehensive plan entry, any binding document that clearly, as opposed to an enlightened opinion, that clearly articulates that 20-acre remaining parcel for farm use shall not have structures or residences, more accurately? I didn't mean to say structures, residences on it.
Well, what I was going to explain, sir, is that there's a lot density requirement, one lot to every 20 acres. In cases similar to this in the past.
And I'm sorry, did you mean one residential lot or just one lot?
One lot.
Okay.
If she'd come in and this 22.79 acres hadn't had a home on it already, we could probably have carved off a smaller piece and put a note on the short plat saying the main parcel is 20 acres.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot put a home on that in order to keep this density standard and allow for this provision. To your point, you're right. It would be different talking about structures versus lots, but I think that would be in harmony with the intent of this provision. I provided an analysis for you.
So, excuse me, just following up on that, excuse me. In your hypothetical example, we've got 23 acres. The minimum cutoff is 1 acre. If that 23 acres had been divided administratively, 4 or less plots are allowed. If it had been administratively divided into a 20, a 1, and a 2 acres each, would that have been permissible in your judgment? Because the lot density then is 2 residential lots against the 120. You'd need another 20 to balance that lot density. Is that the reason?
Right.
Okay.
I mean, and it would be foolish to put a note on the larger piece and another small piece and have one home site.
It'll come up later. Why?
Okay, I
I'll let you
understand.
go.
So going back to Franklin County Code 17.10.010, this is where we find the purpose statement for the AP 20 zone. The code states, residential subdivisions are not compatible with the intent of the AP 20 zone. Short plats may be permitted for farm labor housing or where the landowner wishes to sell the farm or keep the house. And then it says, or in cases where deemed appropriate by the Board of County Commissioners. And I think that's truly key here. But I do want to explain the rationale that the department made, because the department does not have that clause in cases where deemed appropriate. It is the Board of County Commissioners. So in our analysis,
And let me just clarify something. When you say the department doesn't have that language, what you're saying is you have the administrative authority to subdivide up to 4 plats, but you don't have the discretion to go outside of 17.10.010, but we do.
that
I
is
just
correct.
wanted that to be clear because again, that's going to come up in a minute as well. Thank
Yes,
you.
Commissioner Peck, that's true. So just to show our rationale and our analysis and how we arrived at the administrative decision, I provided a quick analysis of short plats in the AP zones. And I provided a table for you just to show everything that was done by the department in the year 2020. There were many. The department was very busy, obviously, in processing many short plats. In all cases, the standard of 1 to 20 was met, with the exception of one short plat where it was like 19.8 acres. So it was just under that 20. If you round it, it would work out. So I wanted to call that out. And I also, in the analysis that I provided for you, wrote out just more detail about how we, and some of the things to take under consideration. I did find in my research that other counties in Washington State have different approaches. And in some cases, say in Whatcom County, they require a deed to be recorded when something like this occurs, saying that, we are making sure that we are keeping this density standard effective with this sort of workaround for people. I've explained to people at the counter before that come into the department that it can be hard to get a mortgage on a piece of land that's 100 acres in size. It's a farm. So I think that this provision is really important in Franklin County for a number of reasons. And one is so somebody can keep their house, separate it from the farm, but also if they do want to have a family member, say, give them a piece of land for a home site and they want to be able to go get a mortgage on it, it can be more readily accessible to get lending on a conforming size lot for Fannie Mae, standards, that sort of thing.
So Nicole, if the existing home on the 20-acre remainder were designated as farm worker housing, would that then make it compliant?
I don't know the answer to that. Certainly, we would have had to look at that very closely.
Certainly, if the new parcel was a residential parcel and, just to make it easy, was inhabited by the farm owner, and they wish to use that existing structure on that 20 acres for farm worker housing, that would comply.
I presume so.
Right. So do we have the benefit of knowing how it's used today? And I'll say up front, we have no way of knowing how it will be used in the future. So really, this is one of those cases where it could be compliant or it might not. It depends on the actual usage. So do we have the benefit of knowing the actual usage?
We have only what was provided in the application.
Okay.
And the application said that the present use of the land and structures is a residential home and shop. And the application does describe that the remaining acreage is used for agricultural uses, alfalfa and walnut trees.
Do we have any sense of how much of it is dedicated to that residence? And I'm not going to include the shop because to me that's a farm support structure, not a residential structure.
Yeah, I have not visited the site, but just based on aerial imagery, there's a majority of the parcel is in fact used for agricultural uses, from what I could
So
tell.
in the earlier example you gave where we had a parcel that was 19.7 or 8 acres and the residents only took up a small portion, we deemed that an acceptable accommodation. We approved it.
Yeah, I don't know what was deemed, but I know that that was
Okay.
the outcome.
Well, leave that sentence out and say we approved it.
Yes.
Is there any reason to think that this one is substantially different than that one?
The difference here is that if we allow the subdivision to occur and 2 lots are created, those 2 lots will create that density standard of 1 to 10, not 1 to 20. It won't even be close.
How did we allow it previously?
So previously, the department wants to accommodate special requests when it can. So I believe I recall from working with the past director of the department that there was a situation like this, but where there was not already a home on the site. So we said, it's reasonable. We can let this 20 acres over here be set aside to maintain that density standard, as long as we put a note on the plat saying that it can only be used for agricultural
So
purposes.
that 19.8 roughly parcel didn't have a structure on it.
Well, I'm talking not about a 2020 plat right now. I'm talking about a different scenario.
Okay.
But what I'm trying to say is basically they transferred their development rights. They gave up the opportunity to build a residential home on the larger piece so that they could, with a note on the plat saying you cannot get a house permit over here.
Well, that's another example.
Yes.
If we could go back to the example you gave where it's 19.8 acres and it sounds like there was a residence on it already. The line of reasoning I'm following here is equity. When we have discretion, the first thing I look at is, are we treating all of our citizens equitably? It doesn't mean exactly identically, equally, but fairly and equitably. And if we've previously done an AP 20 sub like this and we've got a 19.8 remainder, or we've got one that is already got a residence on it and we've allowed it, then I want to be consistent.
So to answer your question, Commissioner, I don't know what parcels had houses. I believe only
Okay.
2 of them did, if my memory serves me right.
Okay.
For that particular short plat, the beginning acreage was 79.3. So they began with just over 80.
Right.
They ended with 4 lots. The average lot size was 19.8. So it's very close to a 1-to-20 density. Whereas in this case, we're looking at a 1-to-10 density ratio. And the code does say that it needs to be a 1-to-20 density ratio.
Unless the existing residence is farm worker housing, right?
Yes.
So really, that seems to be the question for compliance, is whether or not the existing structure is determined to be farm worker housing, and we don't have any indication in the record as to whether or not it is.
I think that could be one avenue. So what I have prepared for you folks is a resolution, if you'd like to consider it, where you would say that the proposed lots do conform. And a statement I've provided, if this is something that you want to pursue. Of course, this is up to the commission.
Well, but before we get too deep into that, I'll just be right up front. My interest is in equity and making sure that we're doing today for person A what we did yesterday for person B. It is clear after reading this and having this discussion that there are conflicts between our code and our comp plan and our practice. And I don't think that that is anybody's wrongdoing. I think it's an artifact of time and a lot of changing ordinances and rules that haven't kept pace with one another. So I'll continue to keep an open mind, but so that you know where I'm headed is equity and allowing us to do this because we've done it for at least one other person previously, but then drawing a line that says henceforth, we need to get our comp plan and our code and everything in alignment so that this isn't an issue in the future. So I just want to give you the benefit of that so you know what the questions are driving toward.
Yeah, unfortunately, in response to that, I would have to say that if this came to the counter, we would tell, hey, we're wanting to short plat. What do you think? Should we go get a surveyor? We would tell them no. I think at the beginning, they were told the wrong answer. And so that's led us down this path. That's part of the issue here.
Yes. Well, and thank you for that because we're all human. We make mistakes.
That's
but if the mistake was the county's, then the benefit needs to lean to the citizen.
Right. So that's an important thing to bring up. And I bring that up because you talk about equity. And certainly a lot of people wouldn't even get to the application point. We would tell them you can't apply for this.
Right.
And so I want to make that clear that
Did
this
the
one slipped through the cracks.
I'm sorry. Did the applicant expend time and or money based on the erroneous information they were given?
Yes, sir. And that is in the record.
Okay. And to me, that's a pretty important element. If they'd simply been told that and went away and changed their mind, it'd be different. But if they've expended time and money, then we're
They built a house in their head.
We're responsible for that. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
So the resolution that I prepared does have a clause where if you wanted to make a determination to reverse the decision of the department and approve the appeal, you could make the finding that although the short plat does not comply with the density standard, the Board of County Commissioners find it appropriate to authorize the short plat as proposed.
Well, I appreciate that. I've asked a lot of questions. I'm going to be quiet for a while, but I think that's where we are, is that we have contributed to this misunderstanding in a significant way, and in the interest of equity and fairness, I think we ought to allow it to go forward. And then we need to get staff together and get our processes tuned up so that we don't find ourselves here again.
And Mr. Chairman, I should add that I believe that the appellant is on the line and would be interested in speaking when you want to give her that opportunity.
Commissioner Mullen, do you have any questions?
I concur with Commissioner Peck that I think that she went down this path with the wrong information given to her, and that we should side on her side with going forward with allowing the.
And so at this time, I would like to hear from Ms. Kelly.
Melissa, are you on the phone?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
I had submitted some comments. Would you like me to read that or address the things you've been talking about?
Either one, whatever you would
Okay.
cover.
Okay, sorry, the live feed is behind the phone, so I was trying to catch up. I thank you so much for hearing the appeal. As has been discussed, I feel that I was led along the wrong way by the county. I started the process back in June of 2020 and had my initial discussion with planning and building, and they led me along and gave me each step that I should go along the way, to the tune of $4,500 that we've spent with the health department and application fees and surveying, contracting with the surveyor. And all along the way, I was led to believe that it fulfilled the zoning requirements and that we were meeting the HOA of the area, was that 20 acres had to be in the remaining parcel. We made the parcel to be a triangle shape so that it would keep the integrity of the circle and the agricultural farming of the remaining parcel. So that the 2.11 lot is a triangle shape, in congruence with the line of the circle. I also am the sister of Chris Lee. Chris is the landowner. I'm the applicant. And we've read also that it would be, whether it be farm worker or family, would be able to build on the lot and then later subdivide off. And, that would meet zoning. But, as we know, you can't get a mortgage if you don't subdivide off a building or loan, I guess. So for us, anyway, in addition, I just want to state that we were trying to meet the zoning requirements, and I appreciated the help all along the way of the planning and building department. And then we even got a letter that said, pending short plat approval. It went out to all the neighbors and everyone that it was going to be approved. And then a few days later, we got the denial. It really was a full surprise to us because we had spent several months investing money in the process. So I thank you for your opinions. I've been listening to the meeting. I want to keep the area in congruence with the field agricultural zone, and I would really appreciate if it were able to happen. Thanks.
Okay. With that, is there a motion?
Nicole, the proposed motion is in the package, is it?
We have a suggested motion to uphold the administrative decision and deny the appeal, as that was the action taken by the department. Alternatively, if the board does want to move forward to approve the short plat as proposed based on your authority to deem it as appropriate, we've prepared a resolution for you to consider for that purpose with written findings already prepared for you with that clause that I just read a moment ago. And that is the alternative motion that we've provided in your
Do we have a resolution
report.
number?
2021-043.
Okay. And for the benefit of the record, would you mind, Nicole, just quickly going over the findings in that resolution?
Yes, I'll be
so
happy
that
to.
we have it in the record.
So the findings of fact say, 1, the proposed lots do conform to the comprehensive plan and zoning requirements. And I'm going to go to the subsections that pertain to Chapter 17.10.050F1 Innovative Short Plats. It says the application must comply with the purposes of the AP20 zone. And we've written the applicant has stated that the short plat complies with the purpose. 2, no lots shall be smaller in size than 1 acre. And in fact, the smallest parcel in the short plat is 2.11 acres. 3, the short plat shall consist of no more than 4 parcels. This short plat will result in 2 parcels. And 4, short plat shall comply with the density standard of 1 to 20. For each parcel less than 20 acres in size in a short plat, there shall be a minimum of 20 acres set aside in the main farm parcel. Although the short plat does not comply with the density standard, the Board of County Commissioners find it appropriate to authorize the short plat as proposed. Next, the short plat complies with the standards included in Franklin County Code Title 16 subdivisions. Specifically, the lots meet the requirements for rural lot access, and the application submittal complies with the standards and requirements stated in Chapter 16.32 short subdivisions. The rest, I don't know if you want me to read that.
That's sufficient. You got the parts that I wanted to have in there, and obviously you're smiling. You knew which parts they were.
Yeah.
The fact that it doesn't strictly comply with the comp plan was up front, and then the secondary piece is where the board deems that it's in the best interest, and those are the 2 necessary offsetting deals, because otherwise somebody begs the question, why did you approve it if it doesn't comply with the comp plan? I just want to have both of those things in there. So with that, I'm happy to move for approval of resolution 2021-043 as presented. And that would be approving the appeal and allowing this to go forward as we've all discussed.
So that's the motion, the alternate motion is listed in the pamphlet.
That is, correct me if I'm wrong, that is the motion that would approve the appeal and allow the subdivision go forward as the applicant has requested in her appeal.
Thank you. Yes, I second that.
Been a motion and a second. Discussion. Nicole, could you go over the figures again of the 2 lot sizes? I got 2.11 for the smaller size. What's the larger size?
The larger lot will be 20.68 acres after the
I missed the
subdivision.
0.68 because it didn't add up to 22.79. Okay, that makes it add up to that. Thank you very much. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Passes unanimously. Okay, we'll move on to the presentation of the Franklin County Comprehensive Plan update. Nicole, you're up again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This morning, I wanted to bring to you a presentation on the Franklin County Comprehensive Plan update, as you mentioned. This process has been underway for a long time now, and we've presented to the board in different occasions, but there is a new composition of board members. So I wanted to be able to sort of provide an update on all of that, and hopefully we can bring that presentation up. Yes. So I'm going to start with my first slide, which is, it just says background and refresher. As I mentioned, I just wanted to bring some information to you. I plan to do it in a couple of different meetings, a series of presentations, all of them really short, but just going on some different topics. That way I can introduce the board into this process that has been ongoing with the county staff and also the Planning Commission. And you've engaged AHBL to help you with this process so it can bring you up to speed on where things are. Today, I will not be talking about any pending UGA applications. I will not be talking about the actual plan, the document that we've been working on, any of the changing to goals and policies, things like that. Instead, I'm going to take a look back at the information we already have. I'll talk about population details like that. So the intent of the update is follows. It's a periodic update of the comprehensive plan, which is required by the state's Growth Management Act. The comprehensive plan was adopted in 2008. And so, as you can imagine, it's time
Mhm.
to fix this up. One of the reasons for doing the update is to identify those urban growth areas, to take an assessment of the urban growth areas throughout Franklin County and see if they are of sufficient size to accommodate growth in the next 20 years. Another reason why we're doing this is to conform to the legal requirements. The state of Washington does require a periodic update to comprehensive plans for those counties which are fully planning under the GMA, and Franklin County is included in that. We will be updating our population forecasts. A lot of studying and look has already been done with that. We use data from the Office of Financial Management, and I'll expand on that in a moment. And then also, this is an opportunity to study and address emerging issues. So there are things going on in Franklin County that weren't conceived of back in 2008 that we want to take account of and look at those items. My next slide is talks about how the comprehensive plan is a blueprint for the county's development and future over a 20-year horizon. So this comprehensive plan update spans the years from 2018, even though we're now in 2021, 2018 to 2038. And that's important because that 20-year time horizon, 2038, is what we're planning for. The comprehensive plan, as you may know, it guides the physical development of the community. And it is important. It is the basis on land use decisions, such as zoning and subdivisions, like we were just talking about. It's also the basis for transportation investments. We look at housing. We look at capital facilities of the county. It's important for economic development, and we look at protection of the natural environment. There are several elements of the comprehensive plan that you'll see. We call them elements. They're really the chapters or the building blocks of the plan. The main one in my mind is land use, and we have two sub-elements to this element because it's a county plan. So we have a sub-element called rural lands, and we have another sub-element called resource lands. So that's where we're looking at places where agriculture is taking place. In other parts of the state, it would be timber production, those types of things. And then resource lands, that is also important. And then natural element, that is where we're looking at the natural environment of the county and some of those critical areas, such as steep slopes, any wetlands we have in the county, and so forth. The next item is economic development. I apologize, I did not put numbers on these slides, but I will tell you.
You just hold up the one you're on. We can
This is
match
the
it up.
5th slide.
Lots of pictures.
Yes.
There we go.
Economic development will be an important component. Housing, we need to look at making sure that there is safe, affordable housing in the county. We look at conditions of the housing stock, things like that in our analysis. Historical and cultural resources are next. That's a short element, but it's important to recognize those assets of the community. Next, we have capital facilities. That's where the county has the opportunity to plan for the future for facilities and infrastructure and things like that. Utilities is where we talk about different service providers that provide different utility services to residents of Franklin County. And finally, transportation and circulation. And as you might imagine, this has a really important connection with the land use element, looking at those connections between transportation and land uses to understand how that all works. On my next slide, I've identified that the comprehensive plan sets level of service standards for county facilities and how to pay for them. And that's really important because as development proposals come in, they are measured against that yardstick of those level of service standards to see if they are going to be in keeping with those standards established by the county, and if not, mitigation needs to be put in place. The comprehensive plan will require updates to our zoning and development regulations to be consistent with the plan. So we will take up the opportunity to make sure that the zoning and the other development regulations like subdivision code are in keeping with the comprehensive plan, but we're also going to look for any ambiguities or opportunities for improvement in the code at the same time. That's been identified, that's an important opportunity that we have now too. I'll also add to that we will need to update the county's critical areas ordinance because that also needs to be updated in order for the county to be fully compliant with GMA. And in general, a comprehensive plan is intended to balance the public interests, bridge the gap between where we are now and where we want to go. Again, 20-year time horizon on that. Public input is at the heart of this update. So this public input has been guided by the county's public participation plan. We have a website for this project, and we've been keeping that updated. We also have an email list, so interested parties, there's some in the room here who have asked to be on the list just so they can know the latest about these things. They've received notification about pending hearings and different review that's taking place. We've done some direct mailings. We've, of course, done public notices all along the way. The Franklin County Planning Commission has had, I think, over 10 workshops to date. So there's been a lot of look in the public eye at different issues. And then we also have just an open door. People can make comments when they'd like to this plan. My next slide has been updated since you last saw it. It shows the population in Franklin County. So I have two different axes on this. On the y-axis, Franklin County population and state of Washington population. And I think this chart is just fascinating because it shows that when we adjust these to show how they've been trending, Franklin County's growth has really been trending with the state of Washington's growth from about 1960 till about, the year 2000. And then Franklin County just went way off the path.
Somebody
Franklin
let the
County's-
secret out.
Yes, exactly. The growth in Franklin County has well outpaced the growth in the state of Washington. And the state of Washington is just growing by leaps and bounds anyhow. My next slide just gives you a little more detail to show you the uptick in population every year. It's an increase, and showing the difference too between those incorporated areas of the county and the unincorporated area of Franklin County. As you can see, growth is occurring across the board. The next slide shows the different population estimates that have come out from the Office of Financial Management. What's important here is just to see that different scenarios are published by the state every 5 years. So in 2007, and then again in 2012, and then 2017, they've given these different forecasts of how they anticipate, and this is based on review by demographers using different modeling techniques and whatnot, how they anticipate that county growth may occur. They do this for every county in Washington state. What they do is they give a high, a medium, and a low estimate because there's uncertainty. And as you can see, generally speaking, Franklin County has been trending with this medium estimate. There will be a new estimate given in 2022, so next year. But hopefully we'll have this thing wrapped up before we get that new estimate, and then we'll just have to look and see what it says. That's important to know about because these forecasts are used as the basis for planning in the county, but also in the individual cities. So early on in this update, county had a meeting with the different cities representatives and looked at these population estimates and decided, well, it really makes sense to go look at this medium series projections, look at the target year of 2038, and then decide to split up what's that proper allocation that everybody should be planning for. And I'll just emphasize, the city of Pasco has always maintained about an 80% share of the overall county's population, not growth, but the total population. And so that is what we told them that they should be anticipating and planning for with their update, because they've also completed a comprehensive plan update.
Cole, is that 80% number consistent with the big change here?
So that 80% is just a share of an allocation of how we parcel it out. So it does account for past growth. That chart you just held up was the past growth, and then the future growth as anticipated by the Office of Financial Management. So we took a look back and look forward.
So is 80% in here as well as here?
Yes.
Okay.
I do want to emphasize that this update is a part of the legislative process. That means that the Open Public Meeting Act applies, but you don't need to disclose any, ex parte. There's no such thing as ex parte communication on this update. So you are free to talk to any and all of your constituents about this pending matter with the comprehensive plan update. As opposed to a quasi-judicial hearing where you would have certain property rights in question, an example, of course, being a conditional use permit or a rezoning. So this is a different animal, and I just wanted to be able to call that out to you. In terms of legislative actions, this board has already taken 3 legislative actions as a part of this update process. The first being a resolution in 2017, which initiated this update and adopted the public participation plan. That was the notice to the public that the comprehensive plan periodic update was underway and set out a path forward for completing the update and receiving comments. Next, Resolution 2018 was passed, I believe, in like May or June of that year. It was documenting substantial progress. This was because the statutory deadline for the comprehensive plan update occurred on June 30th of 2018. That was the year that Franklin County was supposed to have everything wrapped. That was the day that Franklin County was supposed to have everything wrapped up. That did not occur. This update has taken longer. And so we did want to pass that resolution, which I forwarded to the Department of Commerce, so they would be aware county has been working in earnest towards this update effort, but it will take a little bit longer to complete. In 2019, you passed a resolution 2019-312, which was an adoption of the Franklin County countywide planning policies. And that's an important component of comprehensive planning because it sets forth those policies, those baseline policies that the county and the cities will be working under with this current and future comprehensive plan updates or amendments. I also want to emphasize that that was completed prior to Franklin County, at the city of Pasco concluding their efforts looking at their urban growth area. So that sort of set forth the rules of the road for that effort. I did mention that the update's taken longer than we originally anticipated. A lot of that is just more study was required. The original application by one of the cities for an urban growth area expansion was met by a lot of agencies with a lot of questions. And so they went back to the drawing board. And so we've gone through this process now. My next slide.
So, Nicole, if I could
Yes.
just make a note here, there is pending legislation in Olympia now. It's House Bill 1241 that would extend the time between comp plan updates that are required. And I'm bringing it up now because what you just described with time delays between cities and counties and coordinating is pretty common across the state, and the legislature has recognized that, so they're extending that window out to 10 years. So our due date may get extended if that legislation goes through, or it may not. It's still to be determined. And there's a lot of other things that are being hung on that bill. They call them Christmas tree bills because sometimes they'll hang a lot of junk on them. So it's unknown, but I just wanted to validate what you said about sometimes these take longer than expected. There's an awful lot of coordination, a lot of people involved, and it's common across the state. Thanks.
Yeah. And that, it's so true. This is a comprehensive update. It's looking at so many different factors. And unless you start really, really early, you're going to find that it does take a long time to get through all of this. The countywide planning policies passed in that resolution covered a myriad of topics. I just wanted to call out that one of them was implementing Growth Management Act goals. Another was provisions and policies for establishing urban growth areas and planning for joint planning activities in those UGAs. It also addresses citing public facilities, looking at affordable housing needs, looking at economic development and employment, all of those different factors as prescribed in the State Growth Management Act that the counties need to set planning policies for. Real quickly, I just wanted to show you a map. This is the land use map from the 2008 plan. So this is what is now on the books. This depicts those areas which have been designated as agricultural, and then also little pockets of land, which you can see, which are known as limited areas of more intensive rural development. Those have been identified, and that's where we get things like RC1 zoning being implemented, things like that. So this is just to give you kind of an overview of what the previous plan, which is the currently adopted plan, has in place. And you can sort of see, if you were to zoom in, perhaps on my slide, you would see those urban growth area designations. The next slide is an important one. This is from 2008, but I believe these designations may have been made prior to that time. This shows the areas that have been identified in the past by the Franklin County Board of Commissioners as agricultural resource lands. So these are designated places where it has been found that there is a unique or beneficial, and I probably won't get all the language right here, but everything's in place to make it significant commercially for farming or dry land grazing, different agricultural activities. So in Franklin County, they divided into 3 categories. The first being ag resource lands that happen to have quincy fields, because that's a unique soil type. Next, prime irrigated land. So that's anything that's irrigated but doesn't have predominantly quincy soils. And then thirdly, the prime dry lands. You see that more in the eastern part of the county where you don't have irrigation available. So these have already been established, and you'll see more on that when we bring everything back to you. In terms of next steps, I wanted to let you know that I'll be back to provide some more information along the way. The action of the county, final action once we are ready to adopt a comprehensive plan update, will be by ordinance. We were required to do an aviation consultation. This is because in the case of Franklin, City of Pasco, they want to extend their UGA fairly close to the airport. So we had to do an aviation consultation. That's checked off. We had to do a SEPA review. That's been checked off. The SEPA comment period is closed at this time. The 60-day commerce review is nearly checked off. So the notice went out. This is the opportunity for the Department of Commerce to route the proposed plan with all of its changes to different departments and agencies in the state, and let them know that this action is pending. And so that has already been provided, and I believe they've got about 2 more weeks in that cycle before that's done. We still need a final public hearing before the Planning Commission before they can issue a recommendation. I don't know how many meetings they'll take to make their final recommendation, but certainly, as I've explained, they've had lots of different workshops and such, and so I think we're getting really close now. Again, we have a website. Anyone can access it. It's hyperlinked from the Franklin County main website with all of the information, and the draft copy of the update is there. It's been there for some time so that we can receive further comments, and certainly we would welcome comments at the next Planning Commission hearing. What I'd like to do next is come back to you, I believe on March 16th. You'll be meeting. I have other docket items to bring to the board, and I'd like to come and talk a little more specifically on some aspects of the plan just to prepare you. What I think I'll be doing is talking about UGA expansions in a general sense so that we can just provide that information and kind of prepare you for what we'll be presenting in the future. Are there any questions or comments or things that you would like me to present on when I come back to you on the 16th that you'd like to know more about as you are preparing to make this decision?
Commissioners?
I've got several questions, but I'm going to find a time when we can sit down and go over that, because there isn't time in this meeting to do it. Not concerns, just wanting to keep up with it. It has a huge impact on future development in the county, and just want to be sure that I have a clear understanding of all the pieces.
Absolutely. And we're available as a resource. So anytime, just let us know. Be happy to sit down, talk about these things, or we can also provide materials if there's just, interest in reading up more or learning more about GMA, things like that. I can certainly provide materials and things like that.
The only other thing that comes to mind is the legislature right now is looking at a number of GMA-related bills, Growth Management Act-related bills, and things like including additional environmental interests, whether it's anadromous fish, salmon, other things. And I guess the jury is still out, but once the legislature moves on those bills or not, and assuming they approve some of them, the governor signs them, it'll be interesting to see whether or not those are immediately applicable and have to be wickered into our current comp plan update, in which case, and I think that the chances of that are better than 50-50, that will happen. And if that does, I'm going to just predict that it's probably going to be necessary for us to extend our contract. There's going to be more work to do, and it's going to take even longer than we currently think. Whether you think those things that have to be done are good or bad will determine whether or not you think that those delays and costs are a good investment. We don't know yet, but I just want people to be aware that there's a lot of things, legislation potentially impacting this, that are literally hanging in the balance this week. So thanks.
Thank you, Nicole, for bringing this presentation to us. You did a great job. So it's very informative, and I'm thankful that you came in here and presented that to us today.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Nicole. I agree with Mr. Mullen. And it's one question I have is that there's no Quincy fields down there around Foster Wells, but yet there's a lot of farm ground. It's not even designated to any farm ground. Why is that?
I don't know about the designations that were made years ago. I do know that the county worked with the Franklin Conservation Board to make those determinations. The current comprehensive plan from 2008 doesn't talk about how to change that map. So one thing that we have proposed in the periodic update, that the new version of the comprehensive plan, is to have some criteria and a way in which landowners or other interested parties can fix to have those adjusted and changed.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and the real reason for that is because UGAs can't go out to those areas that have been so designated as resource lands. And so it's going to be important in the future.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you again.
All righty. With that, Keith, I don't know if anybody's been hanging on the phone that long, but word to public comment.
I don't have anybody on the phone yet, but I do have one member of the staff, Matt Mahoney, wanted to make a comment in the public comment section.
Okay.
He's on the phone.
And we do have people in the chamber this morning that probably like to make a comment. So let's go with Matt first.
Matt, you have the floor.
Great. Thank you, Keith. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just like to, I appreciate the board going through diligently on the appeal of the short plat. I do kind of want to discuss what I believe is a misrepresentation that staff provided the landowner erroneous or wrong information. Staff was going through and has on all of these, go through diligently through the ordinances and try to provide the best guidance possible based on those ordinances. If the board asked me what my recommendation would have been, I would have recommended that the board approve this short plat based on my reading of the ordinances. And I just feel that was a little bit of a misrepresentation of what staff did in this case. I do agree with Commissioner Peck that I do believe that we need to have discussions about our ordinances and the comp plan and how those work together, and have those discussions so that we understand not just the intent of the board, but the intent of the people of Franklin County moving forward. So if any of the board members would like to sit down and discuss further how we got to this point with the appeal process, I know that me and Derek would absolutely enjoy doing that. I know Derek enjoys what he does, and I enjoy what I do. So having conversations about the jobs that we do and the ordinances that are put in front of us for us to follow is something that we would actually love to speak to each board member with separately. So I won't go into great detail other than to say I do agree that we need to kind of create that synergy and make sure we have that synergy between the comp plan and our zoning ordinances. That's all I had.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, Matt. I do have one other caller now on the line.
Okay.
Good morning. Is this Taylor?
Yes.
Taylor, you have the floor for 3 minutes.
Okay. My name's Taylor. I'm a resident of Frisco. And the first thing I wanted to talk about was I thought it was a really good idea to fire Keith last week. I think that should go to be taken up to a vote again at some point, primarily because he doesn't represent us. You're the representatives. And you guys should be a little more proactive instead of having assistance with assistance. And anyways, it's costing us more and more money as people are losing more and more jobs. And I think your inaction or inability or whatever you want to characterize it as to deal with the COVID stuff and not open up our county. I think that's pretty much what you guys did and took up as a position. We're still here. I don't really care about phases. I don't really care about what the governor says. And since I was talking about representatives and I'm going to talk about the election and the Dominion software for a second. Not so much Dominion, but the fact that we had Dominion. And I don't really respect how this situation has been handled. I think we're still majorly kept in the dark. I don't think anything's really been addressed. And but you know, it doesn't matter what you guys do, inaction or take action, fake it or make it. I'm going to tell you guys there was an executive order that was put in place, and it's called Executive Order 13848, and it deals with election interference. And so Dominion's already been caught in that. And whether you guys want to do something about it, it's entirely up to you. So that's all I got. Have a nice day.
That's all on the phone right now.
Okay. There are people in the chamber. If anybody would like to make a comment, it's public comment.
Do I need the mask on for it? Or?
No, you don't. You can.
First of all, it's wonderful to see all three of you again. I've actually missed these meetings and being able to be here in person. Jeff Robinson, resident of District 1. I'll be brief. I was deeply disgusted and disturbed by the motion to fire Keith Johnson. I have no idea why it was made. There was no context. I often hear members of this board talk to me about transparency. I have a county website that gives me no information whatsoever on the boards and commissions that my tax dollars are paying for. I don't know who's on them. Don't know when they meet. Now I have a county administrator that I've never seen do anything even remotely unethical on his job. And I see the makings of a hostile work environment, and I have no idea why somebody would want to fire the man. I don't understand. Nobody will explain this to me. I don't understand why it is when I file a public information request, wondering who's on my boards and commissions. I still don't know who's on the Solid Waste Advisory Board. I have no idea who's on the boards that you gentlemen sit on. Not one freaking clue. So the point of my remarks is, first of all, I just want some context. Why do you want to fire Keith Johnson? What the heck could he have done? What possible reason? Why is the website the way it is? Why don't I know who's on my boards and commissions? Why do I have to file a public records request that frankly was not completed because they couldn't? And I think I'm at the 3-minute marker pretty darn close. So I want to make sure I respect that, Mr. Chair. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll put the mask on now.
Anyone else?
Good morning, Commissioners. It's good to see you back in chambers again. You for the first time, Rocky.
Good morning. Thank you.
Welcome to the Franklin County Commissioners Board. A couple of things I wanted to ask about, share with you. Something that I hear at virtually every meeting that talks about the comp plan update is affordable housing. And just wanted to give you a little snippet from somebody in the development world. On approximately February 1st, there was a new state order that come through putting some new energy requirements in place. And just for you guys to know, that added between $12,000 and $15,000 to every single house that's built in Franklin County. And another thing that with that it has done is one of our cleanest sources of energy is natural gas. And with that new rule that went into place, it is now taken the incentive for developers to put natural gas in. And some of our local gas providers are concerned about that, and it could be a big impact to our area. Another thing to take into consideration in this comp plan update that you're getting ready to do with an urban growth area expansion, the state bought some considerable ground out here on the east side of town, and in the circles that I deal with, my understanding, and I haven't got this firsthand because that's virtually impossible to get in the age of COVID is the excuse for everything. My understanding is they have no intention of selling or allowing that land to be used for development. And so I think that's something that needs to be taken into consideration. And if that is in fact the case, that they don't intend to allow that to be used as development land, then in this urban growth area expansion, I think that needs to be taken out of the urban growth area, because if that's the case, then it impacts the rest of us that are attempting to develop. I'm extraordinarily fascinated, and this is nobody's fault, and it's everyone's fault, that it's been almost a year since I was able to stand here because of the actions of one person and inactions of many, that we just said that public records, public meetings are not legal, even though our Constitution requires them. I think that's pretty fascinating. And again, that's nobody's fault, and it's all of our fault. I agree with Mr. Robinson that I think it would be really good to know about boards that you represent us on. That'd be great information to have. Hadn't really thought about it in that way before, but that would be really good. And one last thing, I've been trying for about 15 minutes here to figure out how to get on the county's email list for comp plan updates and related interest stuff, and I can't figure that out. And I would like to figure out how to do that and a little bit easier process through that. I think that would be helpful. So thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Good morning, George Dockstetter, 4951 Self Landing Road, owner of Desert Hills Realty. Been in the real estate business going on 45 years. First thing I want to do is congratulate Commissioners Peck and Mullen on their elections to serve as our county commissioners. And the second thing I want to talk about was brought up by both people, and I brought this up way over a year ago. Our county website sucks. And we need something where it's an automatic, you can sign up like the city of Pasco, get automatic emails. This meeting's going on, the planning commission, the health department, whatever that's involved in our county. And I think we need to get that updated. I'm going to mention it again. I brought it up over a year ago. I'd like to see something done like that, so the general public can have access to that information without me calling, hey, what's on the agenda today? And it's a pain to try and go to our website. The other thing I'd like to see us, since we're meeting again, going back to having some evening meetings instead of day meetings all the time. A lot of the constituents you have can't make it at 9 o'clock in the morning on a work day. And the other thing that was brought up once in the last year, I haven't seen anything about, is having county commissioner workshops instead of just meetings. And that way you could get more public feedback on these items you're voting on. The rest of the stuff I want to talk about has to deal with the comp plan that's coming up that you're going to be voting on. You know, when I first moved here in '69, I think it was probably close to 80-20 with the people living in the county over the people living in Pasco. And now she's saying the numbers are 80-20 the other way. We're going to add 50,000 more people in the next 20 years. And without a major catastrophe or a war, we're probably going to beat that the way we've been growing. And so we're going to stick 50,000 more people within the city limits. What's that going to do to the county? And how are you going to be able to look forward, going through a lot of the meetings I've been to on the comp plan? We're going to have 50,000 more people going down Road 68 and Road 100. And some of those people that are in charge of developing this, their thoughts are, we're not going to have anybody increase going down Road 100 because they're all going to work in their neighborhood and walk and bike and ride the bus. And we all know that's a crock because right now, 65% of Pasco leaves town every day to go to work. So if we put 50,000 more people and take 65% of that, that's another 30,000 people going to work every day, leaving town. What I would love to see is some forward vision from the county commissioners to work with the city of Pasco, the city of Richland, the city of West Richland, Benton County, and the port, and let's start looking at putting a bridge across the Columbia or two. I go to Peoria, Illinois, about the same size as the Tri-Cities, and look there on one bridge and I can see 5 of them going across the Illinois River for one damn town that's not as big as the Tri-Cities. And we've got 2 crossing the Columbia River. And we're bigger by 125,000 people. And the other thing that we should probably look at, and we already see it on my road, is people in the morning coming out of town, heading down Self Landing, going across the railroad tracks and coming back because they don't want to fight the traffic. And with the port taking on that property just north of the old gravel pit for their new processing deal, word on the street is they've already got a big time customer lined up. So I think if you guys looked at the road deal for the future and look at maybe an overpass on Clark Road that would service that area, people could come out of Pasco, go that way to work at the processing plants, Twin City Foods, Pasco Processing, Second Harvest, places like that. They could make that jump over instead of, they're already doing it and our roads are showing it. And so we need to really look at doing something that has to be coordinated with the state, the ports, and whatnot. West Richland's already got a plan to bring a bridge over in their future growth. I haven't seen anything in our future growth that addresses that issue. And 2 other things I'd like to talk about. One, we've got this R20 that was brought in back in the early 80s when we started doing 5-acre tracts north of Pasco. And a lot of people at that time, which the county population was bigger than the city, passed an ordinance, no more small tracts, had to be larger tracts. But if we're bringing 50,000 people in, we need to look expanding our R1 area because not everybody wants to live on a 5,000 square foot lot or in an apartment complex. People want a little bit of room. These new guidelines the city of Pasco's coming out isn't going to allow for a 3-car garage, isn't going to allow for a rambler much bigger than 1,400 square foot. And that's not what people want. People want 3-car garages and a place to park the boat or the RV, camp trailer, or whatever. So I would love to see us expand the R1 zoning, maybe to everything west. I don't know. That's for you guys to decide, but west of 68 and south of the Esquatzel. Let's expand the area to where we can go out and do some of this stuff that people want and want a lifestyle that'll match. And I think our R20 was fine at the time, because back when that was done, the average farm in the 70s when I first got here was less than 120 acres. And nowadays it's 480 acres plus. And that's the old numbers. So I think we ought to be re-looking at some of those issues, especially on a bigger ring closer to town. And I got a few other things, but I'll save them for next time somebody else can get up and speak. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Anybody else? Anybody else on the phone, Keith?
No, sir.
Okay, well, that concludes our public comment. We're on to office business, vouchers.
I'd like to make a motion for approval of fund expenditures, fund expenditures in the amount of $556,410.21 as presented, and note that it has been reviewed and signed by 2 representatives of the auditor's office and the county administrator.
Second.
Motion and a second, discussion. Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Passes unanimously. Is that it, Rocky?
Yes, that's
That's
the
it?
only vouchers I have this
Okay,
morning.
just one. Okay, all right, on to approval of the consent agenda. And there are 5 items on the consent agenda.
I move for approval of the consent agendas 1 through 5.
Second, discussion.
There's a motion and a second, discussion.
I see Sheriff is here. I just wanted to confirm on the contract for medical in the jail, we've been receiving services from back in November, the start date on that contract?
That's correct.
Okay, that's the only question I had. Thanks.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye, passes unanimously. On to the administration office business. Keith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First item I'd like your consideration on is a letter. It's been drafted to Congressman Newhouse on behalf of the Franklin County Commissioners, but it would probably be copied and sent to other folks as well. You are, I'm sure, aware that Idaho's 2nd District Congressman Mike Simpson recently proposed a plan of attempting to help salmon recovery in the Pacific Northwest. And that proposal included removing the 4 lower Snake River dams that dramatically affect Franklin County, of course. That plan is being discussed or has been vetted, but the letter indicates that Franklin County was not consulted by the Congressman Simpson's office, and stating our renewed objection to removing the dams as a solution to a very vexing problem that has been studied and restudied many times in the Pacific Northwest. And so if it is, this was at the request of other counties in our area that are affected by Snake River dams, from hydroelectric production, from agriculture, irrigation, from flood control, all of the different things that are attributed to the dam and our dams, as well as the transportation issues and the environmental issues that would come with trying to remove them. So just ask for your consideration. If you want to send this letter, it's up to you to sign it, and I'll make sure it's distributed and sent. But I'll certainly defer to the will of the board on the matter.
Commissioners, I think we're just looking for consent here.
The consensus is appropriate. I support sending the letter.
I support sending it as well.
Very
It's
good.
unanimous. Let's send the letter.
Thank you. We'll get that distributed for your signatures then. The next item, there is a group, this just came up last week, group called Scout Clear Energy. They are proposing the development of a wind farm in the Horse Heaven Hills that will be integrated with the existing windmill structures that they have there. Benton County and the local cities are asking if Franklin County desires to weigh in on this issue. The Benton PUD has opposed it. Some of the local cities may be in opposition to this proposal. It does not affect us directly in terms of the structures are not being built in Franklin County. And so I don't know if we have an adequate nexus to the issue to weigh in on a position on this, but
I disagree with that. I think it does directly affect us in this way. These windmills that are being put up, the only way their power can be utilized is they've got to shut off a dam in order to put these windmills online. And so it is directly affecting us. They're trying to replace the dams that we just sent a letter to the congressman on. And therefore, I'm in objection of putting any more windmills on the Horse Heavens. And I think that we should support their efforts in denying this happening.
So having worked a number of years in wind, solar, hydro, and nuclear power plant operation development, I might have a little more familiarity with some of these issues. With hydro, when wind turbines come online, you're able to rather quickly and effectively throttle back hydro, and the water that doesn't come over the dam is available for fish, and it's essentially a large water battery, a hydro battery, because that water can be run over the turbines at a future date. So it doesn't really take away from the hydro system. At the same time, nuclear power, which is not able to throttle up and down as quickly, is potentially affected. But again, the fuel savings there is energy that can be used in the future. The real issue, in my opinion, is grid stability / instability, cost of wind power, and the fact that I think as you build more wind power, you give the impression that it is an adequate baseload supply. And that's simply not the case. We all know how intermittent wind power and solar power are, and unless and until a system is created that is as environmentally friendly, as cost effective, as reliable as nuclear and hydro, it makes no economic or environmental sense, in my opinion, to build the turbines. So we may disagree on the reasons, but we agree that it's not what we need.
Tremolin?
I'm going to abstain because of our business involved in the wind industry. I would have a conflict of interest in presenting my ideas. So I'd like to stay.
And along with Commissioner Peck's, which were all good points, I'd like to add that we have found now that the blades on these windmills are good for 20 years. Once their longevity is up, they can't be recycled. They are taking to the landfills. We're also seeing the damage to the environment of the bird species. Lots of them are being killed. So this is not environmentally friendly to our environment, and that's another reason I object. So with that, I think that we could put together a letter in opposition to these windmills in supporting, I think it's the
Benton PUD is kind of the
and this,
driver, but
and
yeah,
Benton County possibly
yeah.
too, right? The
Benton
commission.
County will have the permitting process in their county.
Okay.
Yeah, they would be affected.
So I would like to see us join in conjunction with the PUD in opposition to this, yes.
I know that there's an effort ongoing in Benton County involving chambers, the PUD, other organizations. I think it would be appropriate for us to consult with Franklin PUD and Port Pasco. I believe that they are on board with most of the other agencies in the Tri-Cities in opposition, but as a professional courtesy, before we do anything publicly, I think we ought to consult with them and maybe join together in a combined letter, or at least consider that as a Franklin County voice from all the agencies.
And Keith, maybe reach out to Big Bend Electric too. I'm sure they're in opposition too.
Right.
So thank you. Okay.
All right. The next item, while we're on the subject of writing letters, is a letter that has been requested from the Hanford Communities Organization, David Replug, who his primary work is with Tridec, but he administratively manages the Hanford Communities Group. A letter to the newly sworn in Secretary of Energy, Secretary Granholm, regarding the definition of high-level waste out at Hanford and how that's being treated. Recently, the state of Washington, through the governor's office and the attorney general's office, sent a letter encouraging the Biden administration to take a different tack than what the Trump administration took on this. And we who have talked about this internally feel like the direction that the Biden administration wants to go is not the direction that the local community wants. People, the cities and counties that are affected most closely, and that the claims made in the letter sent by the state to the Secretary of Energy is not consistent with the local values and feelings we have about cleaning up on a rapid basis and making sure that it's done appropriately. So I sent a draft of that letter. The time is of the essence. They would like us to send that out or confirm that it can be sent today. So that's the reason it kind of came up at the last minute. I just received it yesterday, but wanted to make sure that the board was willing to sign that letter.
Keith, is this the letter where they're asking for the chairman's signature?
Yes, I believe so.
I read that letter this
Yeah.
morning and in complete support of it, because they're trying to reclassify the term high-level waste.
Correct.
And they're not recognizing that at the time, which is probably trying to just walk away from the problem that is out there, and it's immediately affecting this community of ours. And I think it's a well-written letter, and I am in support of signing that, but I'd like my fellow commissioners, concurrence on that before I did.
I read the letter as well this morning, and I'm in agreement. We need to sign it.
Well, concurrence of the board is actually required to sign it, and I support it too, so it sounds like we're unanimous.
All right.
Fantastic.
All right, thank you. I do have two callers on the line, but I have, looks like one more item under unfinished business that I would like to discuss very briefly, but we can do the calls if you'd prefer those first.
Absolutely.
All right, let's go ahead with the calls. Good morning, Michelle.
Hello.
Go ahead, Michelle.
I've been watching the meeting and looking at the last meeting as well. And in regard to the Snake River dams, I would urge it to be sent to Guy Norman. He's looking for local feedback. I think there is a small, perhaps growing view that maybe taking out all 4 dams, as Simpson proposes, is not the way to go, and that they would preserve the lower 2 dams. And I've been talking with, my many people, including the irrigators associations, and there is some hope for that. The utilities seem to think that that is probably the way things should go under the court situation, because they're not going to redo NEPA and environmental stuff. The judge has very vast leeway on determining what the next steps are in ordering the protocol. He's not going to redo another EIS. So what was done is done, and there's a few adjustments. But if the local leaders, elected officials, and the people direct their opinions to Guy Norman on this matter to that effect, I would think it would be heard far more than perhaps in the legislative body right now, because really it's the judge that's going to decide because of the action in the court. I also strongly oppose what was mentioned at your last meeting, Joint Resolution 4205. It is a blank check. I think it's actually going to take away state rights and majorities in those because of the wording in it. And I think that just hearing this proposal on the Growth Management Act affirms that. All peoples, all clean air. I mean, that's the riskier lobbyist, I think, is touching on the tip of the iceberg. I think the federal footprint is so large in our state already, it would conjoin it through a state constitutional amendment. And I would be very adamantly and direct your lobbyist to be vehement if he's representing you in these matters. And it also goes to those wind farms. Just building those turbines and those windmills cost more than the energy they'll ever save. And Texas, being on their own grid, they went down because the federal subsidies are so tantalizing, and 40% of the electricity was coming out on them, and they froze, as you know, and people died. And this is going to be a killer in so many ways, as you know. And so you put all of that together with the action going on in the legislature and federally, and these windmills, we should be, it should be very clear that your constituents, via this phone call and others, are adamantly opposed to the windmills. They're not a solution for us. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
As you know. So you put all of that
Good morning, is this LaWanda?
Yes, it is. I am just calling about the windmill farm. I am grateful that you are all opposing it. I agree with that absolutely. You've echoed a lot of my feelings. I have a brother-in-law that does work for the state, and it is his job to switch the power. And he has stated that many times he has to let the water spill over the dam. So we are losing some of the natural energy from that. Windmills aren't necessary, honestly. They're just mandated. Started building those up there. I was kind of mad because the Kennedys were not, they opposed them and they didn't want to see them in their backyard, but I have to look at them in my backyard. And it ruins your view at night. You don't get to see the stars as well. But more importantly, we always put feed out for the birds in the falls and winter months and the colder months. And we have just seen a huge decrease of birds. And it's very disturbing. But also when they first put those in, we were getting cougars coming down out of the hills that we had never seen before because it displaces them. So where farms don't, the animals enjoy living on the farms. So it's very, very concerning in that and really quite unnecessary. As far as the solar, I think continue to encourage people to buy solar for their individual homes. They put them on the roofs. There's no visual pollution that the windmills or a large solar farm would create where you get this huge sun glare. So I think that, it's just unnecessary, and it just ends up costing us higher power bills because we have to subsidize them through our power bills. So That is my point. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all the calls I have right now, so I'll continue. Just a brief update on the research I'm doing on the ethics policy. I know we've discussed this, and we're getting some samples from different counties around the state on what I think will be something we could bring before the board for a recommendation. I did learn this last week in a discussion with Carly in our HR department that an ethics policy would have to be bargained for with our bargaining units. That's not a problem. It means that we have to hold in good faith those discussions with them.
Okay.
We will do that. We will probably likely have at least one public hearing on the matter as well. And so we're getting, like I said, getting those examples from around the state and working with MRSC on what that policy will look like. But we're making progress on it, and certainly answer any questions you may have. But that's really all I had to cover today. We had scheduled an executive session.
Keith, there's
Go ahead.
there's one more topic, the membership to the Columbia Basin
Oh,
Developmental League.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. We have a membership at the Columbia Basin Development League. Commissioner Peck sits on their board, but it requires that we pay our dues to that organization. As an oversight in our office, we missed the deadline, but I talked to Vicki at the Columbia Basin Development League. She's the executive director there. She knows that our dues are forthcoming, and so she'll get those.
How much are our dues?
I don't know off the top of my head how much that is. Commissioner Peck, I don't know
I
if you
don't
know.
recall either, because it has historically always been handled administratively
Yeah,
through the admin office.
I know we have included it in the budget, so it's not asking for extra
Right.
funds, but I can get you that information today.
Oh, maybe Commissioner Peck can enlighten everybody of the importance of the Columbia Basin Developmental League.
Sure. It's one of the leading agencies that works to finish the Columbia Basin project that was promised to us by presidential approval many decades ago. And that out of the original roughly 1.3 million acres that were to be irrigated, only a portion, probably on the order of 700,000 acres, ever got irrigated. So there's potential for another 320,000 acres. It's currently dry land. It would produce billions of dollars worth of ag potential for the region. Provides food, provides jobs, makes use of great soil, makes use of water that is already accounted for in the Columbia system. So it's not that if we built it, we'd have to go beg for water. The water is already allocated. Myself and others spent time in Washington, D.C. over the last couple of years meeting with folks as high as the Vice President of the United States and the Secretary of Agriculture, Sonny Perdue. Obviously, those positions have changed. I didn't personally meet with the Vice President, but members of the group did. And we had high hopes of getting included in a major infrastructure bill. Now that the person in the White House has changed, I don't know what the opportunities might be or not be for that. But there's still a full court press to do it because the current administration is talking about a major infrastructure plan. And so those conversations are ongoing. And the Development League is not the only entity that's out there pushing for it, but I'd say it's one of the respected ones that has a fairly loud voice and has been working on this for a long time. And we could probably go on for another hour on it. I can't even find the words to express how valuable and important it would be to our region. So,
Thank you. And to add to that, I would just say as a farmer, people would say, why would you want more land developed? And I'm saying, because we want more voices. There's power in numbers. And when we have more farmers, we have more voices. And with the threat of our water, we need more voices. And so I'm in favor of this completion. And I understand that there are segments that are being completed as we speak, and there is more land coming on. It's just that the vast majority of it isn't. So I'd like to see that membership renewed, and we keep fighting for that water and get that land developed so we have more numbers to speak for our behalf. All right, thank you. Keith, we're down to the last public comment. Is there anybody on the phone?
No.
Okay, with that, I guess we're going to move into executives.
Oh, I'm sorry. Looks like we do have a.
Oh,
member of the audience.
There we go.
Round two, I had meant to comment on this originally, but another thing that disturbed me about my county government was the lobbyists that we have. As a Democrat in this county, and I make up nearly 50% of the voting members of this county, and it's growing, I don't think the lobbyist represents me. I don't think that the lobbyist represents the county government. And when the lobbyist is railing against Democrats, when I hear crap like that, it doesn't make me feel like I'm welcome in this room. My money helps to pay for this county government that we got. So either the lobbyist needs to reframe how they speak about things and try a more respectful approach, or we need one that can separate partisanship from public policy, because it's embarrassing, it's dehumanizing, and it's disrespectful to me as a citizen of this county and a heck of a lot of others. And it's not something I intend to be quiet about, or a lot of others in this county do. Thank you. That's a polite way of saying change it, or it will get changed for you.
Okay, with that, we're going to move into executive
Oh, you
session.
got one more.
Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Hi, my name is Leanne, and this is my first time coming to a meeting like this, so forgive me if I don't say the correct thing, but I am a mother of 3, and we live in Pasco, Washington, and I'm also a personal trainer in the area, and I just wanted to speak to our children and getting them back into school. And a study recently came out that shows that today our children spend less time outdoors than prisoners do. And I just think that we are not doing right by our children, especially in this area. There are states that kids are going to school without masks, and you are putting so many families in such a hard position in sending them to school with a mask or keeping them home. And a lot of people don't have the option to homeschool, as I have done this year. And I just think that we need our kids back in school full time, not at home watching the computer screen. And I think that we are caring less about our children and more about what the teachers are saying. And I just really think that we need to speak and hear from more families and how much it's affecting them. I have 3 children, and I also have about 20 nieces and nephews in the area, and they are all struggling in different ways because of all the rules and regulations that are placed on them. Each family is different, like every family in the area, and everybody is doing the best that they can. And I just feel like we're getting like breadcrumbs of hope. Like, school will start regular next week. It's going to go back next week. And yeah, some kids are in school, and that's great, but they're still in masks, and we're not thinking about their future and how this is all affecting them. And I just wish that you guys would really think about that. And then also sports is a huge issue as well. My son grew up playing basketball for the city, and now this year that was not an option for him. Other kids who were in professional sports or higher income families were able to pay for some sports. Those kids got to play sports, but sports is a really important part of childhood and development and teamwork, and we're just not thinking about that, and it is just really sad. And I just wish that you guys would all take that into consideration, what we're doing to our children and what the future holds for them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I think we'd probably all like to respond to that one. Unless there's objection, I'd like to take a minute.
Well, this is public comment, and we're not supposed to respond to public comment. But I too would like to say something.
Actually,
but
our practice has been, as long as we had board consensus, that we could do it. And in this particular case, one, thank you for being here. It's important to get in front of your government leaders and share your voice. It really is, and it has more impact than most people realize. 2, I don't disagree, which is a roundabout way of saying I generally agree with everything you said. As a county commissioner, I and all of us have 0 say over schools being open or closed. Our only influence is indirect. As members of the Benton Franklin Board of Health, we can speak to Dr. Person, who is the health officer for the Benton Franklin Health District. And she is in a position, has authority to make recommendations to the schools about when it's safe to open and not. And she has taken a position for some time now that schools can and should be safely open. But the decision rests with local school boards and their work with local union representatives representing teachers and school employees. So my guess is we probably all agree, and they will certainly speak for themselves, but it is your local school board that has the authority that makes that decision. And certainly not that it's going to help you, but you feel free to tell them that I agree with you, but I don't think that's going to impress anybody. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you for being here and speak with the folks that can actually help us. Thanks.
So Commissioner Mullen, if you'd like to say something.
I just appreciate you coming in and expressing your feelings and thoughts on the ideas. I think we all are in agreement with you. I wish that there was more that we could do. And if anybody has any avenues that we can take, I would be more than willing to listen and try to expedite those avenues. But I believe that Commissioner Peck is correct and that the school boards have the ultimate decision, and whatever we can do to support you, we're behind you.
And I am in consensus. Up north, there's a school. I'm not going to mention it because I don't want to bring any duly recourse to it, but they have been open the whole time.
I know, and there's actually a big wait list for it now. So so many people won't even have the option to send their kids next year.
Now, are you talking about a public school or a private school?
A private school.
This is a public school.
Oh, is it?
And the school board remained open. Now, these health board doctors, like Commissioner Peck said, only can advise and give them guidance. It's the school board.
And how do you meet with the school board?
It's not meeting with the school board, it's replacing the school board. You need to think about running for school board, as a lot of people do. That's the way we're going to change it. And it takes the people. And I just was up in Chelan talking about this last night. We need to start being active as citizens. So take that under consideration. And I believe we have one more public
The
comment.
school board is a local elected body, and they have the same requirements for open public meetings and records. And if you have trouble finding out when they meet, my phone number's on the website. Call me.
Okay, thank you.
A couple of more things that came up as the discussion continued. I would encourage you to ask for a presentation from Scout Clear Energy. And in that presentation, I would encourage you to ask some questions: where, what, when, why, those kinds of questions. But ask them for stuff. Ask them for answers of what their answer is to when the wind blows is when the spring runoff is happening in our area, right?
Yep.
And so when the wind blows is when we're spilling water. That's a fact. You can ask most anybody around here. And I agree with you, Mr. Peck, that is stored energy as a whole, but in our region, they're not able to hold that volume of water. Please push everywhere you can to help finish the Columbia Basin project. That would be an economic boom to our area that we can't even fathom. To double the size of the Columbia Basin project would be spectacular. It would everything's in place except the leadership it takes to put the wheels on it. And I'm not saying you. I certainly realize it's bigger than our local area, but the more pressure that we can put on them, the better. Also, Mr. Dockstetter encouraged you to consider workshops, meetings in the evening. I think that's very, very valuable. I think this room would be packed to capacity, and the old school packed if this was an evening meeting. So certainly would encourage that. In that meeting possibility with Scout, longevity, and ask them to break it down. The cost of a machine, I've done this multiple times. The cost of a machine, the longevity, the replacement cost, value, etc. And ask them, what does it take to maintain a machine for a year? I've been told it's between 40 and 60,000 to maintain a single machine for a year, when the machine can produce between 80 and 120,000. So if you take that off the top and then you put the cost of the machine to build it at over $1 million, and you have the roughly 50,000 a year to buy itself over the span of 20 or 25 years, it doesn't work. And with the way that we are having to subsidize this, it simply doesn't work. And I would encourage you to have that meeting and ask those very difficult questions, and don't glance over because they're going to try to deflect, get to the root of the real answer of what those answers really are. So thank you for this opportunity. I'm excited that we're sort of open again.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you. Okay, with that, we will move into executive session.
Actually, I have a couple comments I'd like to make, if that's possible.
I think we can go to commissioner comments. Help yourself.
Okay. I don't know if we need to make a motion on it or just a recommendation, but I would like to see the electeds come in on a rotating basis, one per meeting, just to give us a brief update of what's happening in their office, concerns, ideas, or even acknowledgement of outstanding work by some of the employees. I think it's important that we see the electeds come in and give us the representation. And I'd like to say thank you for Nicole to come in and give us the update on what she presented today on the with her office. I think we need to see that from all the electeds. And we're basically asking that would be once every 2 months that they would come in with as many electeds as we have and department heads. And I think it's only fair that that we get to hear their ideas all together, because we can't speak to each other outside of this meeting. And I think that the public would like to be as informed as well. So I don't know how we would move forward on that, but I think we could make a schedule to where they're scheduled to come in for just a brief minute or two, whatever amount of time that they need, or as short as time as they need. But I would like to see their smiling faces in here and just have better communication between the board and them.
Okay, I think we're talking about workshops with the different department electeds. I'm all in favor of it. And I think that's something that, Keith, we need to be working on and getting put into place so we can start that process.
Yeah,
I've been in
I don't,
favor of that too.
you're welcome to make a motion.
Excuse me, Keith, just a quick comment. I heard two different ideas. I heard other electeds being asked to come in. Of course, we can't require it because they're independent electeds, but being
Sure.
asked to come in, and I understand that's what you meant. And to give us updates. I think that's great, because right now we do have individual commissioners going and talking to them, and it'd be beneficial for everybody. A workshop, in my mind, is a very different thing. I support the notion of having them come in, and when there's a major issue, then a workshop. But I'm envisioning endless workshops with several different other electeds, and that's going to be burdensome to our time, to put it politely.
Well, I just think that if they would give their time to come into the,
I absolutely agree with your suggestion.
and not to put them on the spot or ask questions. I don't want that. I want it just to be a friendly atmosphere where they come in and let us know what's happening. And maybe they have an employee that's doing an outstanding job, but we kind of need to know that. I mean, it's just a better communication throughout the courthouse, and I think it would be a positive avenue to take. And I realize we can't mandate that they come in and do it, but I sure would like to hear from everyone. And
I think it's a great idea. I support it.
Yeah, you're welcome to make a motion. I don't know that it's necessary. I think board's consensus here and provide me direction to invite them and put them on the agenda, give them some time. We'll just start doing that. I may add a suggestion that we include the staff or the departments that report to me at some point. They're not elected, directly represented by elected officials, but they obviously conduct key business for the county that you guys, I'm sure, would want to be interested in understanding better and knowing what their issues are.
sure, I think that's a great idea. I didn't mean it just directly towards just the electeds, but someone from each department, so that we have a better understanding of what's happening. And I think the public would like to see them as well, and to be updated. It just seems like the fastest avenue. I mean, as busy as everybody is and time constraints, I think that we're here. I'd love to hear from everyone.
We'll do it.
It's been done. It was a long time ago. And
Okay.
it's long overdue to do it again.
And I have another motion that I'd like to make. I may have acted too swiftly at the last meeting on filling the position in the administrator's office. I'd like to make a motion that we postpone that until the office is up and running and everybody is back working in the courthouse in person. I just don't know if it's beneficial to bring another person on at this time to have them work it from home without direct supervision. And I know that there are offices and departments in the courthouse that are fully up and running, and they probably should have some consideration on which positions we fill and how we fill them. But I just don't think it's beneficial to the county to bring on somebody at this point and have them work remotely.
Is there a requirement for them to work remotely?
No, I'm just saying that I think before we hired the assistant in the administrator's office, that the office is up fully running and can.
So your motion is to suspend the hiring of the employee in the administration's office.
Yes.
I second. Discussion.
So set aside for a moment whether it's appropriate to delay that action or not. I'm not aware that our office staff and your office are working remotely to some extensive degree. I know that you've got a bit of a rotating schedule.
We always have somebody here in the office, but we are working remotely for the most part.
On a rotating schedule.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. Is there any other business before we go into executive session? Any
Commissioner,
more
there
public
is
comment?
a caller on hold. It's Michelle Andrews. Apparently she has some additional information she wanted to share.
Okay.
Go ahead, Michelle.
Thank you for taking my second call. The young lady that was the mother that was talking about the meeting you directed to the school board meeting. I do have a document that I worked on that I augmented as I received it from another county. It was part of a manual I was putting together that has all the public meetings. Some of them may be needed to be updated, but I'm sending it to your email. And what she needs to know is that the school board meetings are at 6:30 on the second and fourth Tuesdays in Pasco for the school district, if she's still there. And I'll be happy to send yours as well. So you have something to refer to when you're looking at meetings within the county. So it'll be in your email. You're welcome.
All right. Thank you. Is that it for public comment? Okay.
Yes, that's all.
Okay, with that, we'll move into executive session under RCW 42.30.110, parentheses 1, parentheses I, litigation and potential litigation. And Keith, do you know for how long?
Probably 10 minutes
10
at
minutes.
the most.
Okay. And
Chairman Didier, which parties do you want to have join that meeting?
we'll ask Keith that, but before we go into executive session, it's been requested for a bathroom break of 5 minutes. So we'll take a bathroom break for 5 minutes, and then we'll go into executive
Okay.
session.
I would request that the members of the board, myself, the clerk, and Jen Johnson and Sean Sant from the
Okay.
attorney's office, PA's office. Jen and Sean are on. Yes. So we can.
So we can take that 5 minutes right now? Sure. Because I think the clerk of the board, right? Okay, we'll go ahead then.
morning, Commissioners. I didn't catch how much time we put on that exec session, but technically we're not supposed to resume the meeting until after that time period has elapsed.
10 minutes. Have we went? Has it been 10
Did
minutes?
you set a timer?
I didn't.
Okay.
I have no idea when we went in.
It's probably been about 7 minutes. I want to wait a couple more.
Steve, do you know what time you walked outside?
Karen, do you have a timestamp for when you changed the recording?
Keith, I don't know what it is, but it sounds like there's an echo coming back in. I'm hearing the recording played back with a delay over the WebEx.
Shouldn't be any now.
I don't know what it is, but it sounds like there's an echo coming back in. I'm hearing the recording played back with a delay over the WebEx.
Is that him recorded right there saying that again?
Sean, do you have 2 devices on? I think we're good now.
Okay, we are coming out of executive session with no decisions being made. And we are now back in session. Is there any other business?
I think Commissioner comments probably would fit in here, so I just want to make an observation about the unscheduled action wasn't on the agenda to change our position on the timing of hiring a deputy. I just want to highlight the fact that it's going to take several weeks before we go through the process and find the right person. And I anticipate that we're going to have people back in the office very much the way we're back in this boardroom in that time frame. And even if there's a week or so lead time before everybody's back when we have a new deputy selected, I bring it up because I've heard a couple of citizens complain this morning about things like county websites not being up to date and wanting more information on who's on what boards and who the members of those boards are and responsiveness to public records requests and all these things that we continue to place on the county administrator's office. And in the same breath, in a meeting last week, there's talk about, in general terms, feeling like he's not getting the job done. So somebody makes a motion to terminate his employment. It seems inherently unfair to, on the one hand, complain about the performance in an office and refuse to give them the resources to do the job or to delay it. Not looking for a response. I just wanted to speak my mind. Thanks.
So we are in commissioner comments. Commissioner Mullen, anything to say?
Again, I just don't think it's beneficial at this time to bring another person in to work from home. I think that we address that position once things are opened back up and that everybody is in person working inside the courthouse. I mean, we're in phase 2 right now, and our governor can't even tell us what phase 3 is. It's not much of a plan. If you don't know what your final destination is, you can't even tell us what phase 3 is or how many phases there are. It's disheartening, and I would like to see us get all back opened up again. I just think there needs to be a better plan. And the 2 weeks of being shut down is now just right at a year. So how long will we be held to these mandates that are holding us back? And I think it's just in the county's best interest to postpone that position until we are fully operational and back to work.
I would have hoped that you could come in and lead an effort to update our website. What a great way to get up to speed and all the things the county does and all the different departments, and it'd be a perfect fit. So anyway, we can differ on that.
Well, on my commissioner comment, I would like to state that I would like to see all 3 of us commissioners get a hold of Dr. Pearson and encourage her to emphasize the fact that our schools should be open and to push the boards to open up our schools. Any other comments?
I would agree with that. And I've had several citizens reach out to me in complaint that the seating arrangement capacity for an outdoor event can only be 200 people. Well, if you're going to go play a football game and between the 2 teams, the coaches and the assistants, you're at 130 people. Well, that doesn't even give 1 parent per student to come watch. I think we need to push that, the players and the coaches generally use different facilities than the people sitting in the stands. I think those numbers should be separated, and I think we should go as far as to push the fact that opposing team and home team could be separated as well, because a lot of the larger stadiums have several different restroom facilities. They're nowhere close to each other. I don't understand why we're limiting this down to only 200 people. So if there was any recommendations we could make to Dr. Pearson, then I think those are noteworthy.
So I would agree with Commissioner Didier on encouraging Dr. Pearson and the health district staff to ensure that they have communicated clearly with the school boards about the health district's recommendations on the safety of schools being open. I disagree on the notion of us trying to influence or pressure school boards to take an action. I don't want them doing that to us, and I don't think it's our place to use our position to try and leverage the school boards. Dr. Person's job does not include us leveraging her to go to try and influence school board decision-making. Her job is to give a professional medical recommendation, nothing more. So respectfully.
I'm not trying to leverage. I just think it needs to be brought to their attention because
I'm sorry, I wasn't speaking about your comments.
Okay. I just think that as many comments as I'm hearing, I know that probably only 1 out of 100 people at the most are reaching out.
Okay, with that, the meeting is adjourned.
Since everybody's here, would you mind signing?
Absolutely.
Thanks for using web.